I started taking jazz drumming a little bit more seriously when I was 14 or 15 years old, but didn't have a teacher, so there was a lot of time where I was just on my own and I didn't know anything. Even when I was in college, there was a lot of stuff that I didn't learn in my jazz degree. So I want to share with you now the 5 most important things that I wish that I knew when I was learning how to play jazz. The first thing, and maybe the most important thing, is that listening is absolutely essential. You have to listen to the music. Just like with anything, if you're not immersing yourself into the scene, into the culture, whatever it is, whether it's cooking or painting or whatever, if you're not doing it, if you're not listening, you are not going to fully reap the benefits of your practice. When we listen intently with no distraction, that's called active listening. And when we actively listen to jazz records, say Miles Davis's Kind of Blue, or John Coltrane's Giant Steps, or Wayne Shorter's Juju, there is so much that we can take away from even just listening to one track off of those records. So it is super important to just take an hour of your time and just listen to a record all the way through. You could even write down some things, some notes that you hear as you're going through. Say, oh, wow, the drummer played this thing, and this is how the pianist and the bass player are interacting in this part. All that stuff is so important in getting a deeper understanding of what is happening inside the music. If you're like younger me who didn't know how to listen or what to listen to, I want to give you a free PDF down in the video description that's going to give you a ton of jazz records for you to check out. On this list will be some of the most influential jazz records, as well as some records that maybe you might not have heard before, but are really, really important when it comes to the history and the feel, and some other records with some personnel that you might not have heard before as well. Second thing that I wish someone told me when I was younger is that speed is not important. Let me say that again for the people in the back. Speed is not important. Yes, there are some times where someone wants you to play a little bit faster. Those times are very slim, and the most important thing is making the music feel good, which is another point we'll get to in the end. I'm already spoiling so much already, man. Specifically on the speed aspect, I wish that someone had told me not to practice as fast as I could or to try and get something as fast as I could, but rather to focus on the quality of what I was practicing in terms of the feel, the dynamics, the tone production, and the technique involved with all of those things. There are some concepts that I would be so much better at if instead of me trying to practice Cherokee at 400, I was practicing how to be relaxed and how to really get a good sound out of the ride cymbal. The third thing that I wish I knew when I was learning the jazz drums is that I need to relax. And you do too, actually. When we are tense when we're playing, again, any instrument, doesn't need to just be the drums, we limit ourselves and our body and how it can move and how it can execute what we're trying to do. If you practice tense, you're going to play tense. If you practice with your shoulders up here, when you play, your shoulders are going to be up here, which this looks and feels awful. I'm not going to go into any more detail about relaxing because I already made a whole video on relaxing, which you can watch up here if you click over there, or it'll be in the description as well. But I cannot stress just how important it is. If you saw that video up there, you probably saw that it says number 1 rule or something. It's the number 1 rule to be a better drummer. So if that goes to show how important it is, it's probably pretty important. The fourth thing I wish someone told me was that you need to know and study the history of the music. Now, you don't have to know every single bit of information about every record that has ever been released, but it is important to know the history of the influential records, the records that you like, and records that made an impact on the music. One of the main things that I have personally taken away from studying the history of the music is really diving into who played on what record. That's important because then we can really study the individual musicians and focus on how they shaped the music and how they influenced jazz music as a whole, and then specifically influenced their instrument. For instance, in the drumming world, one of the most influential drummers to date is Tony Williams. Now, Tony Williams, if you don't know, played on a ton of records with a ton of people and had his own solo projects. But the person that he most notably played with is Miles Davis with his second quintet. If you know that when he started playing with Miles, he was 19, and think about that and how he was shaping the music, that gives you a little bit more context into when you're listening to those records, what was going on and how influential he really was. One of the main reasons that we try and know and study the history is so that we can dive into individual players within the history of the music. For instance, if you check out a record that you really like the drumming of, let's say you listen to Miles Davis's Live at the Plugged Nickel. If you don't know who that drummer is, it's worth checking out. Once you know it's Tony Williams, you can do further study into what Tony played on, all the records that he did with other people and as, his own solo project. And you can really get into the nitty-gritty of what made Tony Williams Tony Williams. When you start to understand that, then you can start to incorporate some of Tony's vocabulary and some of his phrasing into your own, which is really part of what makes jazz music so special, is that we are constantly influenced by all of these great players. So it's important to know all these great players and the influential players through history so that you can study them individually and take the parts that you like and craft your own drumming or saxophoning style, whatever instrument you play. The fifth and final thing that I wish someone had taught me when I was learning how to play jazz was that the most important thing is to make it feel good. Again, make it feel good. If you're not making it feel good, you're not doing your job. If booties aren't shaking, then money is not to be making. That was close enough. This final tip ties into all the things that we've talked about already in terms of relaxing, speed not being important, knowing the history, and really listening. Because when you tie all of those things together and you listen crucially to certain records that have a really good time feel, and you know who that player is, and then you practice and emulate what they're trying to do and how they made the music feel, and you relax as you're doing it, it's likely to feel pretty good. Especially in today's day and age, in the age of Instagram and social media and fast media consumption. The same thing goes for drummers. Everyone wants to play as fast as they can and say, hey, look at what I can do. But it's not about that. This music, jazz music, is about making music feel good. Again, you have to make the music feel good. So this has been the 5 things that I wish someone had told me and I wish I learned when I was younger and when I was starting out learning how to play jazz. The reason I wanted to tell you these things is so that you don't have to make the same mistakes that I did and waste some time on some things that are not that important. I hope that you've taken at least 1 or 2 or 4 or hopefully 5 things away from this video today, and that you can take another step in your jazz drumming journey and be a better drummer. If you liked today's video, I would love it if you could hit that like and subscribe button as well, as it helps me to feed my porcupines. Thanks again, and I'll see you when you're a better drummer.